экскурсии для подготовки специальных репортажей. Business Excellence органично вписался в семейство изданий РИА «Стандарты и качество» и занимает высокую позицию среди профессиональных деловых изданий страны. Представляем журнал Business Excellence. Учрежден в Великобритании в 1993 году как официальное издание Европейской организации качества. С 1996 года издается в России под названием Business Excellence – деловое совершенство. На его страницах с авторскими статьями и интервью выступило множество известных отечественных и зарубежных предпринимателей, топ-менеджеров, мотивационных спикеров. Уникальные проекты журнала «Бренд», «Идея, дело, развитие, успех», «History» подробно раскрывают перед читателями ключевые этапы становления и путь к успеху самых прославленных компаний. Business Excellence – авторитетная площадка для взаимодействия государства и бизнеса. Журнал выступает ключевым информационным партнером профессиональных форумов. Крупнейшие компании организуют производственные экскурсии для подготовки специальных репортажей. Business Excellence органично вписался в семейство изданий.
Уважаемые коллеги, добрый день. Начало мероприятия будет через 6-7 минут, поэтому приносим извинения за небольшую техническую задержку. Через 5-7 минут начнем.
Dear colleagues, good afternoon again. Welcome you on the event Improvement of Norm and Technical Regulation in Construction and its prospects. A wonderful audience, wonderful city. We are glad to see you all. Let me introduce our speakers. I'll present them in the order of the speaking officers. Captain Andrei Viktorovich, Lotsman Nikolaevich, Deputy Chairman of Committee of Russian Union of Industries and Entrepreneurs, Alexander Makhovich, Vice President of Russian Construction Union, Sergey, Director of Department of Technical Regulation, Austria, Griff, Sergey Nikolaevich, head Department of Capital and Construction for Gazprom, Nikolai Ivanovich Lukin is first deputy head of management and complex expert assessment of Russian railways. And I will say that our speakers, we've got limitation, and I'll be speaking about time limiting. So to fit into time frame, Andrei Viktorovich, I'm giving you the floor. Yes, sure. So it's a welcome speech of Deputy Minister. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Let me to read the welcome speech from Deputy Minister of Construction of the Russian Federation, Sergey Muzichenko. Unfortunately, he was unable to be present in our forum. So he gives the speech. So congratulate with the day of Standard Day, on behalf of Minister of Construction, Housing and Utilities Ministry of Russian Federation. I welcome participants and guests of the forum on Russian Week of Standardization, run by the Standard Organization, represents for foreign organizations of federal bodies, researchers, and educational centers, employees, heads of industrial enterprise of Russia are participants of this event. And this actually means the importance of the regional and national standardization. Implementation of the industry and the technologies is important state policy in the area of housing and urban environment. Production of construction materials is not possible, and construction is not possible without standards. The program of 2021 encompasses all the areas of standards development, taking into account all the recent developments and experience of domestic and foreign experts. And I think this work of the forum will actually promote the work of our specialists in our area. So I congratulate all the participants with this day, and I wish I wish a fruitful work for all the participants. So thanks for your attention. So now I'll start my presentation from my place. So I'm going to start the presentation. Please do start the presentation. Start up the presentation. Colleagues, a couple just words about norm regulation and construction. I'll start with this introduction part. So we'll actually adjust it all. I'm aware that everybody is more or less acquainted with the system of norm regulations. The technical regulation and construction regulated by federal law by 163, and about technical regulation law, and they are related to the safety of constructions, the requirements to the safety of the buildings, and there are about 10 additional norms and regulating documents. Also, the law 123, federal law 123, concerning the fire safety. And you can see the structure of these documents of the national system of national regulation is various and complex. And as a result, for the last decade, we've got a lot of redundant and duplicating requirements that affects the experience and expense and cost of the construction. And we've the 1815 decree, the start in September, reduces the number of requirements by 3,800 ones. So we've got in the norm framework 3,700 items of requirements. We understand that it's just transitioning into the requirements to volunteer. It doesn't mean that they are not to be complied with. Actually, they should be substantiated. Actually, deviation of this requirement should be substantiated. So this, from on the one hand, reduces the time frame of all the decision making and the processes. But another trend is a reduction of development of the norm documents, our pace of economy development, strategy of development of the construction area dictates new timelines for shaping new norm documents. Starting June this year, we had 1186 decree, government decree, that will let us reduce the process time frame by 120 days. And based on the analysis that's run by FSS, it actually expedites the process. In Yekaterinburg Forum, it was asked question, who reduces this norm that we've got two documents in one norm. But actually, we are speaking about not necessary changes and changes introduced into the norms. It lets just bring out the document into the relevant community discussion. The only difference is that also this focal points that are the source of hundreds and 1,000 documents. Now we can, of standard documents, they can be it can be done in no time. So, but about the prospects now, from actually getting from a very rigorous method to a flexible method. And making it simple, it's an approach when a compulsory requirement is posed as the requirement to the final product. The building have to have this year lifetime. It have to be dry, warm and comfortable. And all the calculations, tests and features of the products, especially construction materials, can be selected by the designer optionally from different sources. This kind of transition will require change of certain documents. It requires to be, so we have to transfer to the machine reading format of the documents. So this way we'll be able to meet two goals. Also, we need to go to adaptation of the technical requirements to global warming phenomena. So it was discussed last week in St. Petersburg Forum 100+, and it's information trend. And implement, and also we need to use these documents as actually substantiation framework. It's also the system of construction requirements management system to be implemented. This is the digital medium that will allow to get the optimum requirements for the construction sites. But we see this prospects to be implemented closer to 2030. Now, speaking about the organization I'm heading now, we are running work on improving its performance. So we're shaping up the project office with 6 project groups in areas of standardizations. And we've got 438 joint ventures and GOS. We've generated dialogue venues, work groups with representatives of state or commercial organizations. So there are temporary entities and temporary vehicles that have the short-term task. We've created an 8th work group in the area of transport infrastructure for Gazprom. So I invite all the stakeholders to join these groups. So if you don't have the context, you'll see it on the final slide. Please write to us. So in the framework of my presentations, I want to speak about reorganization of the process of quality assurance system. It's been, and we've got this technical committee with 368 organizations in this committee. We've got over 600 experts involved in this work. In the framework of this organization, we foresee of creating subcommittees on electrical supply, on polymer compounds, and optimization of the existing work groups. So we've got with 78 organizations within subcommittees, with 70 leading research institutes, 26 associations, and 36 developers of the country. And with the gradation, they were not within this technical committee, but are active participants of the acting committee. They have full-fledged opportunity of discussing all the documents within the framework of the work group. And another important focus area of the technical committee, we see setting up effective dialogue between the builders and manufacturers of construction materials. And you can see in the slide, you can see the actually the joint work of these two groups. And we suggest allocating actually responsible for the exchange of documents on standardization on the projects, and considering all kinds of comments and on subordinates. I think that the participation of all the stakeholders and considering all the norm documents is the key to creating relevant norms and standards. Thank you for your attention. I'm done with my presentation.
Andrei Viktorovich
Kapitin is acting director FCS. I've got a question. Great volume that's done by FCS of the committee. You've shown how managed to keep the balance. But the great number of other disciplines and industry and production of construction materials and other areas, the main focus, so that's been shaped up under your leadership. What's the goal? What's the focus goal? Is everybody going to be happy? How are we going to get to the bright future? I didn't get the essence of your question. Well, the bright future will be achieved by being open-minded, thanks to the dialogue. That's my appeal to all the participants of the forum. Just join in to the discussion of the norm documents will be under discussion. So join in, participate. Now we can see some actually starvation in terms of specialist shortage. But the market, we can hear that there are some claims about actually the clandestine type of the structure. That's, you see, the structure is clear. I'm talking about the digital platform. Next year, we have plans to transfer all the performance of the committee to the digital platform. It will allow to perform technical committee performance to be more open and let all the experts to join in. So we'll reduce the number of errors by times. Thank you. So professional, it will be boosted, it will be skyrocketing. Professional level will be skyrocketing. Thanks to our other speakers, we can see how they are interacting with the organization. While the organization is the basis for construction, is construction area. Are there any questions from the audience? We can ask questions. Maybe at the end we've got 15 minutes Q&A session, so you will be able to ask your questions from this. So please get ready and formulate. As we carry on, I'm giving the floor to Andrei Nikolaevich Lotsmanov, Deputy Co-Chairman of Committee of Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs on Industrial Policy and Technical Regulation. Please actually share my presentation. Dear colleagues, I congratulate you with the holiday. Andrei Viktorovich, thanks a lot for his presentation, because very crucial points have been raised. Till 2019, for several years, industry and Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs and some other bodies were unable to set up the constructive dialogue with Ministry of Construction, and actually a lot of unanswered questions and outstanding issues have been accumulated in terms of construction process. And on the 23rd of July, 2021, saw a symbolic event when our SPP, our organization, addressed Mr. Husnulin to start the dialogue with industry in a simplification of design, expert assessment, construction procedures. And there was a meeting with organization with Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs and the first Deputy of Ministry. Mr. Faizulin was involved in this discussion. And our SPP program, RUII program was adopted and has been implemented. The main issues on the agenda was actually the concept of adoption in the area of construction, renovate the structure, update that TK 465 structure of the committee. We were speaking about the special construction organizations to develop the regulations for safety of construction materials regulation, because EU market of construction materials is not regulated, and so we need to make a dialogue between representatives of industry, construction, and authorities to perform this tax. Actually, the certain roadmap has been signed. Also, this issue was discussed with Mr. Shalaev, the Minister of Standard, with participation of the industry representatives. Now, the finalizing stage of creation, coordination.
Creating a coordination council for technical standardization in construction, and on October 21 there will be the first joint session for the Social Council with the Russian Standard Authority and Ministry of Construction, where the practical issues will be resolved. And because, for example, the construction of COVID hospitals would have been impossible without using the steel constructions for fast erected buildings, and so with the metallurgy workers and others, we have consulted about the construction of such fast erected buildings, and now with the technical committee number 20 we have established a special program for the non-ferrous metallurgy and aluminum workers, aluminum industry workers, and this problem will be resolved. So there is a task now to keep a stock of the structures for such fast erected buildings, so that we could promptly build residential and social infrastructure facilities, so that there would be new buildings erected that do not that would meet all standards, and also it's a good market for the non-ferrous metallurgy industry. The capacity of this market about 3 million tons for non-ferrous metals. It's new jobs. For metallurgy workers, it means new taxes coming to the budget, and now we're discussing for the technical committee matrix, and we are now preparing new proposals for discussion jointly with FCS Federal Enterprise, and a very important solution. We are going to adopt a technical regulation for the safety of construction materials, and Ministry of Construction of Russia will be the Ministry of Industry and Trade, and the Russian Chamber of Commerce and Industry and other similar authorities will be involved, and so it's steel pipes, polymer pipes, and others. We are prepared to participate in this work very actively, but drafting mandatory requirements does not make any sense if there is no state control. But if we remove the cameras, police, and the fines, nobody will be observing these traffic rules, because I stopped using it after I paid fine twice. So today a law has left without public oversight that has been adopted recently. Several fields which govern which have to do with the safety of construction materials on the market. The industry is very concerned with the situation, and the public chamber and the Chamber of Commerce and Industry are very concerned with that. We are preparing an address, a petition to the government, because this seems to be a situation which is not permissible, and the government and presidential administration will hear the voice of our industry. There is an example from the piping industry. The construction industry is one of the principal customers. It's about 4.5 million tons of piping. where out of which almost 500,000 tons are the used pipes dug out from the old gas pipelines, decrepit, they are sandblasted, wrapped in tape and sold as if they were new ones to very crucial key facilities. For example, recently they have been installed in St. Petersburg energy system. There have been a criminal case, and we hope this practice still continues, and we hope that FCS, Federal Enterprise, and the Ministry of Trade and Industry, including the regulation of the Eurasian Economic Union, will put a reliable stop in the way of such products getting in the market. So literally last week there has been a large conference in Novosibirsk under the auspices of the public chamber, and the concrete industry has been able to reduce the amount of the counterfeit concrete by using ordinance number 472, and last year the control has not been reinstalled, and as soon as the public control has disappeared, the amount of the falsified, of the counterfeit concrete has increased dozens of times. There is 5 million tons of counterfeit concrete. Every second fire is the fault of the counterfeit cable. Therefore, development of the technical regulations is very impossible. That should stop it. And we have applied to the committee for the industry of the Federation Council, and the decision of the committee is to recommend to the Ministry of Economic Development to provide for retaining the public oversight. The timing for providing the information was on August 1. Now it's October 14, and the Ministry of Economic Development still has not answered anything and has not forwarded any feedback to the Social Council with the Ministry, the Special Consultative Committee with the President, and with the Regulation 301 of the European Union. We are also dealing with that. We are working with Germany, and our international relations are quite active, international ties, and we are trying to actually use the international experience of providing for the safety of construction material. This Regulation 371 has a direct effect throughout all the countries of the EU, and 444 construction material standards are mandatory for usage throughout the EU. All the construction materials can go to the market only through the procedure of mandatory certification and notification with the participation of the third party. And the most important thing is that the authorities which are checking the safety of the construction materials should be registered and put in the special register of the EU. And moreover, there have been changes prepared to law number 174 to change the notification procedure, and the government has not supported this. And we are now proposing to come back to this question and we were try to make an acceptable solution for Russia and the Eurasian Union, that the Russian accreditation authority would grant accreditation to the special body, while the Ministry of Construction will grant it additional authorities. And as the basis, we could take the work that has been undertaken by the sectoral unions, because the manufacturers of the polymer pipes, they know which labs are testing the pipes and which are selling the certificates, whereas also the heating radiator manufacturers, they know who is just selling certificates and who is really doing the certification. Andrei, you have 1 minute left. And we hope to be able to resolve this issue in the process of preparing the relevant regulation. And our last example is that we have Germany has accredited 400 authorities, and only 228 actually operational. And we are prepared to jointly discuss it with our colleagues from the EU and other countries, because the industry really needs the mandatory standards certification and rigid public oversight in the market of the Russian Federation. Thank you very much, and I'm prepared to answer your questions. Andrei, thank you for your presentation. It is hard to imagine the construction without the construction materials. It's built out of construction materials, and now we're giving floor to Mr. Anvar Muzafarov from the Association of Construction Industries of Russian Federation. Dear Andrei, dear speaker, you have simplified my task. A lot of what I was going to say has been already stated. However, something has to be added from what has not been said yet. And if possible, can you please turn on the next page? The second page. So, dear colleagues, so while I was still working with the USSR construction agency, I was in charge of preparing state products, various programs, including solving the residence availability problem. And while in 1988 to 1989, the government was funding 75% of the constructed residential stock. Now it's only funding 2%. And also the housing utilities, they used to be funded by 85%. Now it's a lot less. So the construction, like I said, was funded by the construction not of non-residential facilities was funded by the state by 75 to 80%, and now only by about 2%, and the rest is 90% or more is funded by private investors. And as a chairman of the Russian construction, the USSR Construction Authority, I was signing the GOST and SNP sets of rules and standards, and that's really the same type of similar to the rules that are effective now, and but there is a very rigid purpose which is we're being faced with. Chairman of the government, etc., addressed to the chairman of the government, etc., and only 7 days, according to the existing standards, should pass from the start of the construction to the submission of the documents. And nobody's going, seems to be willing to implement this rule. Currently, we have obtained this strategy as of October 3, which has been sent to me as a member of the regulatory optimization group, and we have still one channel for technical regulation, and I don't know where this document is coming from, but it has been sent to us on October 3, and there have been large meetings, and Andrei has told me that we have agreed about many things, that just should be no further questions like that asked. And in the official documents which are being sent around by ministries and institutions, but this single channel idea contradicts to the entire system of legislation of the Russian Federation and the entire existing system of technical regulations which has established by now. So either we declare a war to all the ministries and institutions on the part of the Russian Ministry of Construction, or we interface and work together with the ministries and institutions. And so the best alternative to this one-channel arrangement is this coordination council, which we are proposing to establish, the coordination council that would enable us to mutually tie together all the documents and legislation that we are trying to bring together. So this one-channel arrangement for the creation of this coordination council should be closed, or we should not try to fool around and create the structures that nobody needs. If it's Ministry of Construction and the FCS federal agency, they keep trying to charge ahead with this issue. Next slide. This is a picture that Andrei has once sent to me, and I'm happy to use it, concerning where we have those comprehensive, complex points where the time is delayed by a year or more. Only for the procedures of the compliance assessment. First, it's the public assessment, then it's project documentation, then the assessment of the working documents, and then the assessment of the documents when people are starting at the large facilities to order the equipment. And then it turns out that in order to prepare foundations, bases for that equipment, the buildings and structures do not actually fit, and therefore the construction entities apply to the appraisal authorities. So for a year or two, we have been doing that and moving around in circles around this problem. So there are 3 documents or more. According to the technical regulation law, for some reason we have lifted to the level of the government of the Russian Federation the confirmation of the mandatory sets of national standards, even though previously no one has been involved with that, and it goes beyond the framework of the government's competence, because the government does not have competent people who would be capable of assessing the strictly technical requirements that have been inscribed in the ordinances number 15 and 95. So we need to return it back to the Ministry of Construction, and also we need to put back the ordinance number 87, because the content of the project documents are strictly technical documents which do not touch the constitutional rights of the citizens. And the next issue is the ordinance number 145, which has previously been approved only by the Ministry of Construction of Russia, and the return of those 3 very important provisions will simplify the situation very much, and we are unable for 10 years to change this ordinance number 87, and we've been still moving around in circles for quite a while. There are 3 ways of doing it, so it can be delegated to the Russian Ministry of Construction. Some measures for technical regulations have been adopted, and we need to significantly strengthen the organizational standards as they are being put through the technical committee discussion and approval procedure, and significantly enhance the functions.
Naturally, colleagues, I think that we need to give more trust to professionals. It's not the first time I'm pointing this out. When Mr. Shukhov made his first Beerman, his first gantries in Passage, he didn't go to Nicholas II or Mr. Stolypin, to Prime Minister, so to Witte, to approve these designs. There was no need. Why do we need to bring the technical solutions on the governmental level? It needs to be left on the professional level, in the professional community level. And governmental involvement should be in the areas where it's some dangerous and hazardous sites and unique sites. And actually, it's 17–18% industrial construction and 2% of this kind of construction in housing construction. So thanks for your attention. Marsha Mohamedovich, very important information. So I'd like to thank you for the framework created in the Russian Federation. It still exists. The consider modernization, the changes. It's working with other countries. I haven't seen this level of profoundness what we've got in our approach. It's a multidisciplinary approach and increase of competency in adjacent industries. And it's a challenge for our professional community to bring up the staff, the personnel, train them, and give all the tools for the new generation to actually get these backlogs. I'm giving the floor to Director of Department Technical Regulation Nostroy, Mr. Sergey Lenski. Good afternoon, colleagues. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for invitation with a presentation from this lecture and this highly profile event. I'd like to congratulate the participants with the Standard Day, International Standard Day. I'd like to point out that many we've been speaking about the same things, but it turns out that this looks like my presentation has been curtailed. So I'd like to start with the points that bring the shortcomings in technical regulation process and construction. It's a lack of separation between obligatory, compulsory, and volunteer requirements. Also, the 368 law changes, and also there's the separation between compulsory and voluntary requirements. And this concept has been has been developed by all kinds of bodies. We need to get away of this list of this legally binding documents. It's in the national standards and the list of guidelines and rules. There is no common approach to development of norm documents, especially in priorities of development and consideration of the document. There is no joint center of considering the documents. So there is a research and coordination center that have been set up. There is no system of grouping of the standards in terms of the hazard level. Also, there is no joint system of the interpretation. Technical Council of National Union has been actually been coming up with a new structure of the system of sharing all kinds of requirements. It's a compulsory document, and since 815 decree is present, and Ministry of Industry is to approve this. No need to bring this kind of technical documents to be brought up to the governmental level. So there should be requirements of safety and reliability of the buildings. We're speaking about parametric method of norm standards. We've got national standards with material requirements. We understand the materials. It's actually essential part of construction process. And the materials, construction materials, they impact the building life cycle. Also, the proper surveying and designing and construction of the site impact the life cycle. Also, I'd like to speak about the National Union, proposed by National Union and Technical Council, the separation by the requirements. The first group is general documents with the main provisions, the terminology, and the order of the formalizing documents. Organization of construction. Also, we speak about the separation in terms of grade, in terms of level of hazard rating. And we need also to speak in terms of design and survey and construction. The second group is about life cycle related documents. The third type is urban construction document. The fourth, it's norm documents on utilities, external, internal utilities. The fifth is the norm documents on the structural elements of the buildings, and we won't be able to get away from actually about assessment, cost assessment, and lifetime assessment. Also, the costs, we need to consider the costs of materials and labor costs. I'd like to mention in terms of separation of the site, construction site, and object of standardization. So what makes construction and design process very hard when the designer and builder doesn't understand what kind of documents one shall use. Well, it's a list of regulations, so shall one take national standards. And that's also criticize the strategy. We've prepared a number of comments on technical regulations and other documents with outlook till 2030 and to 2035. But one point says that we need to separate the construction site and object of standardization should be separate. So the list of regulation should fix the norms as a system of construction norm documents, construction terminology, general elements, organization of construction, and the norms of performing works and acceptance. All the engineering equipment that's installed on the sites of capital construction, tooling and all the tools, and performing the construction monitoring and the requirements of labor safety. In terms of joint approach, the requirements about compulsory and volunteer nature of the documents, which requires how to separate. We need to go to the system of norm documents and make provisions in the documents of construction. There was SNP 1001. So we suggest that we come back to this, where main tasks and goals should be specified with all norms of construction, all the documents that are taken into consideration, and so on. Let's see the documents, the basic documents of development of all the list of regulation. We think that actually it's essential element of the doc. It's rules of shaping up the rules and canceling, also the indication and notification, and also expert assessment and monitoring. And all kinds of specific cases. The previous speakers mentioned about the adjacent ministries developing the standard documents. Their relationship is considered raw standard, and also Minister of Transport and Minister of Emergency, as I've mentioned initially. The work in terms of action synchronization of the Ministry of Construction and FSS is started. We can see it by the Standardization Council setting up and Research Council Standardization setting up. Also, in terms of actually the notification systems, initially there was about terminology. There were the whole volumes of construction terminology, but it should return to state level, and FSS should develop these documents. And because specialists in one industry, they can't come to terms what it means. There's a suggestion to bring it down in 2-3 blocks. As engineering, survey, and construction, and it will include a number of all kind of construction elements. So to finalize and say that the joint methodological center of the approach of norm standards in construction should be set up. We need to demarcate and separate compulsory and volunteer requirements. Then we need to get away from duplication and redundancy, and also we need to speak about the laboratory that Minstroi would get immersed into. We need, because in our construction sites there's a tendency of not the cold laboratories shall inspection of the structures, but not the quality, but the cost is the driver. And we've been speaking about reforming of technical committee and 465 in part of developing new basic documents on standardization and requirements to technical committees. We need to actually to harmonize all this. And Andrei Viktorovich paid attention. And the separation 465 of technical committee into subcommittees. We consider our national construction union doesn't share this approach because the actual integrity of the building is one. You cannot separate structural answer from the utilities. And if this kind of separation takes place, there will be document copying. We'll see the documents that we passed over from one area to another, just copying. Thanks. I finished my presentation. Thank you, Sergey Lynch. Thank you very much. I liked the final phrase. I guess. So just a picture in my mind that is a human and cardiovascular system lying separately, so a human cannot function. Again, the floor to. But also you cannot see liver and heart in one organ. So, yes, but they are all working for one organism. So we'll have time to discuss these kind of things. So we're giving the floor to the head of the innovation and capital construction of Gazprom Neft, Alexey Nikolaevich Sagolatov. Yes, it's hard to imagine any final conference without digital agenda. Yes, I just want to say agenda, yes, with digital agenda. Good afternoon. Thanks. Federal committee to discuss this kind of topic on this kind of venue. Speaking about information modeling, we need to start from the very beginning. We can argue which industry was the first in the ancient world, or which profession was this. But actually, the skill of rigging up your own housing and then the settlement housing was very important for humans. So with the complexity of the buildings increase, humanity faced the importance of description of them, so that the output would meet the expectations. So we got project documentation, design documentation. It was in different forms. It was available in every specific area and geography and situation. And on it could be cave carved pictures. It could be on the papyruses and others. But with time, the design documentation was getting more complex, and for the last maybe 500-600 years, it hasn't changed. And we can see it's practically the same as our remote ancestors saw them. X is the drawings, X is the sketches, and supplementary documents. And at the end, so what's then? Construction requires improvement of efficiency. So then happened the following. The digital means and computational means, new information medium were appearing up. So ideas popped up. How can we turn into information into project documentation to digital form?
And of course, the best way would be to scan it, create images, and put in some computer-based storage. But given all that, one should understand that for the construction and design documents, relevant amendments and additions are necessary. And the first concepts of information modeling started, they were called BIN, in Russian they're called TIM. And Charles Eastman is considered to be the discoverer of those concepts. The first one is called BDS, and the other one is called GLIDE. What is a specific feature? Essentially, he took a model of structure rebuilding, and he thought, why not make it digital and complement it with various attributes and elements and the documentation? And thereby we have received the BIN in the first trial version, and like I said, we need increasing the efficiency in construction because the customer needs the facilities cheaper and with better quality, and therefore it was required with this digital model to do something about it. And the modern understanding of BIN has changed, and under information modeling, because it's not a model which is implied now, because the model by itself has no advantages for the customers or contractors in construction, but now we understand by BIN the management of the entire project life cycle based on the information available. And of course, better practice, better experience allows to reduce the number of errors and save money of the contractor and customer. And the modern BIM is an end-to-end process without decommissioning, which is still missing. And many understand BIM only under number 2, that it's required only at the design stage. And if we approach it in a comprehensive way, we see the entire project life cycle is covered by the information modeling, and we see that the leading countries are currently developing the technologies for information modeling in this or that way, and there are leaders, some of them are some countries are catching up, and our country is one of the leaders. It's not a catching up country. This technology is developing in our case, and what else can be said about information modeling is that because there are many proponents of this approach, the new tools and for working with information modeling keep emerging, and it's over 10 different solutions. This slide is quoting 10, but it's not 10, it's more, and it's not just separate tools, but in the first place it's a standard, because information modeling is a field of knowledge which is quite complex, and it requires a full description of the requirements and role models. And we have a situation whereby there are a lot of different things. We have upper-level standards, which have been described in the ISO 19650 family, but they are either very upper-level or they are very sector-specific for specific constructed facilities and types of them. And in order to be able to effectively manage all of that, we need a unified system of regulation, unified approach to the tools, to the systems, and we are thereby approaching the very important idea, which is that the highest possible effect among the international practices is where the BIN process regulation is joined by the government. Government is taking part, and the Ministry of Construction of Russia over the last 6 to 7 years has been actively participating in that. We are the federal FCS federal agency, Federal Center for Federal Competence Center for BIN in Russia, and we can briefly cover the results that have been achieved since 2017. We have developed over 20 GOSTs and compilations, sets of rules, which make us help us govern BIN processes. And we have created a very important step to the regulation of BIN and the mechanisms for putting into it various components. And of course, as we are talking about what it actually yields, it does yield accelerated and replication of the best practices and simplification of the data exchange procedure, and which is even more important for those hundreds of customers and dozens of platforms and standards. They all assume the same similar appearance and can all be managed. But still, there is a big field for working, and what is necessary, in fact, is that BIN processes are stalled at the stage of REP design, and we need to move over to a full cycle and describe the procedure of moving over to the common data environment, without which BIN does not works worse, and also do something about the scenarios for using information modeling. And that alone does not yield the safety of the erected facilities and or maybe also the control of the costs. And we need to think and work well in that respect. And of course, we will finally add to a digital replica of the entire country and maybe the entire world. And it would be appropriate and correct to think that FCS FAO will play a leading role in that. Thank you for your attention. Alexei, thank you for this presentation. Now we're giving floor to first Deputy Chairman of the Project Implementation Authority of the Russian Railways, Mr. Nikolai Lukin. Dear Speaker, dear conference participants, as it has been stated in the program, the organizers have asked the Russian Railways to speak about the advanced experience of technical regulation and the construction of railroad infrastructure facilities, and we should in the first place understand not good or excellent, should not understand excellence under this, but by this. But in the light of the new law of the technical regulation, we actually were the first ones who have developed the railway safety designs, railway safety requirements for our type of the track, and also the supporting GOSTs and combinations of the rules. And we were probably the first ones who started to encounter the various hidden obstacles. And we do not have any serious difficulties related to the standards and national and intergovernmental standards. And there are standards related to the rolling stock, to the track design. And we were busy with creating, while we started to create the construction rules related to the railway facilities. Then, during the first update of the SNP set of rules, Gostroy has taken a decision that it will be approving only those things that are related to the construction of the tracks, and everything else has been delegated to the Ministry of Railways. And when the technical regulation about the safety of buildings and structures has been issued, the SNP has turned into a set of rules with a relevant number, while Ministry of Railways was left without its guiding set of standards. And then the Russian Railways started to establish, on the basis of the existing available sets of rules, its own sets of rules, which by the year 2012 have been approved by the Ministry of Transportation. And those sets of rules which relate to this part, they contain the recommended sets of standards for different categories of facilities and structures are related to the most economically feasible mode of operation for the railways. For example, they determine the optimum radius of the curves on the plane, then there are automation and telemechanics devices, and so there is this division of the fields of competence between the Ministry of Transport and Ministry of Construction. And the first sign of problems has emerged in 2013, when in the building safety regulation, in the set of rules number 119, it has become required to identify the items which comply with the rules of the technical regulations when it comes to fire safety and mechanical safety of the structures. And this set of rules, when they looked at it, the relevant working team has looked at it. It turned out that the set of rules is based not so much on the calculations of related to mechanical and other types of safety based on the field survey studies, etc., but just the practice of the previous years, and meaning that, you know, we're doing this just because we're doing this, and so it's more economically feasible. And the SNPs, these construction rules, it's Russian acronym for construction rules and standards, and they were considered minimum standards. And if the conditions for the operation of the facility required for deviations from that rule, they were approved by, had to be approved and were approved by Ministry of Construction and Ministry of the Railways, as long as they did not contradict to the relevant safety regulations, and when it was finally approved, and the items that support the items that were mandatory and the items that were optional have been identified. But because the subsequent practice was going virtually going in parallel according to that set of rules and the Ministry of Transportation set of rules, it turned out that both documents were obsolete. They were developed virtually by the same team and contained, not by 100%, but maybe by 99%, the standards that matched each other. They were replicating each other. And so when the new team started to work at it, it has become an impetus for the joint operation of with the work team that was working, technical committee that working on the another set of regulations, and that has enabled us by the end of 2017 to make the most needed changes to that regulation, and already under the auspices of committee number 465, the committee has been edited in depth, and already at the inception stage we have come to the idea that the minimum sets of rules which are established as the mandatory ones should be based not only on some kind of categories, but on some specific research, and they should depend not just on the applicable rolling stock, its weight and dimensions and other characteristics, and the velocity. Because currently the state appraisal authorities, they are ruling those sets of rules number 119, and they accept every rule as a minimum rule. And if when the lines which carry the most amount of cargoes, if certain sets of rules are applying to it, and if those dimensions are being automatically applied to such railway lines as Transsib, which are obsolete, and they are coping with their tasks at the moment. So we are now trying. So therefore we are trying to redefine it and make it more selective as it applies to different types of tracks and different types of railways. So in the set of rules number 119, because before there have been no other normative document. Currently, we think that there should be standards remaining in it, which are not minimum ones, but that are technologically feasible ones. But where should the designers take those rules? Is it number of tracks, or the switching installations where they are located, etc., track switching installations? So basically it's moving to the construction industry, and already and it's making it very uncomfortable. We have no technological design left with in the hands of the railway authority whatsoever. And in the tables by Anvar, the basic design documents are mentioned. On the slide number 9, it's business plan and feasibility study, but currently we have virtually no documents of a general type left in the field of the design. And currently it's only construction design. And in the design assignment, we should put everything up to the last nail. And the designer should interpret it into the graphical part or text part, and the state appraisal authority is checking it for the compliance with the standards. And in this field, virtually nobody is responsible for it. So is it required? Is this facility required? And it's not at all. It's not mentioned anywhere.
I'm speaking about transport line sites. Depending on where to run this line, in terms of topography, how to build the bridge, what kind of hydrology is around, but can be transferred to an ordinary site. The technology of hospital operation, this construction solution will depend on the technology setting. And this kind of question in terms of variancy of designing and choosing the optimum solution is not present in the norm documents. It seems to me that there was kind of spark. There was just justification of the investments topic. But now actually it's reflected on the documents that in the future it will be design and construction, turnkey design and construction. I think we need to transfer it to all big size and complex sites. Not only the actually the choice of site would be due to technological parameters, and then we turn to the construction designer. Today it's also related to financial issues. So based on this approach to the construction design, all that's not related to the final development of design documentation, the financial people do not relate to financial activity. But at RZD, at Russian Railways, we've set a policy that certain amount of costs that actually is not included into cumulative the range of costs. It is related to the balance cost of the site. But actually, it refers to the cumulative actually cost assessment. I try to consider just one aspect. There are lots of undercurrents there that we can see, and it's not it's another topic. Actually, it's a big layer. What you've touched upon, absolutely correctly mentioned. It's in terms of operation, it's a capital cost. It's a capital cost, and 80% actually is operational cost. So financial aspect is totally different point. So implementing information technologies with us, we create a center of implementation of information technologies, and its task is to start not just with, we started with 3D modeling and implementing some information about the structures, but just throughput process. First, actually, we go to the process of the construction and construction quality assurance, and leading further on to the operational stage, lifetime stage. And also there is a typical construction topic should be touched upon. Unfortunately, today we don't see this topic the way we would like to see. And we're going to speak at 3:30 in our next session. And another topic, it's a topic of a terminology topic, correct terminology, and mismatching of some terms, even in some basic documents, in some legislative documents, legal documents, when one paragraph goes after another, and there is a mismatch between the terminology. So I actually request the technical community to consider this. Yes, thank you for voicing these points. We're speaking about that there is a communication between Stroy and RZD and Russian Railways. This is the basis, that people are cooperating, they're communicating, they build up the common language, and they set the policy and strategy, and they work out the policy and standards. So actually, we're a little bit behind time. So if there are a couple of questions from the audience, please come out. There's a microphone. Yes, there's a microphone stand. Come up to the microphone stand, please. Station Golistok, Pipeline System Association. So could you clarify in the Minstroy, maybe it would be, but for the Standardization Center will be right. We see a reduction of norms, of compulsory norms, but supervision of Rostechnodzor or regional regulatory body say there's only the compliance with design documentation. So question, when the designer hasn't foreseen everything, so not all from compulsory norms, but hasn't foreseen something from the voluntary norms, and it's overseen, and the expert assessment group has overseen that as well. Whose responsibility then that this project has been released and this site has been constructed, was going on? Who's carrying the responsibility? Who's liable? Actually, there are some legal errors, expert assessment due to the time frame limitation. Cannot miss out this kind of outstanding issues. You cannot do away from meeting the volunteer norms. They actually, so regardless of the list of the standards and requirements, are all to be met. They must be met. It's depending, actually, in case of deviation from the norms and standards, depending on their compulsory volunteer nature, they just need to go different procedures. So the project that has passed the expert assessment process is supposed to be reliable and checked. So the bodies of construction monitoring supervision, it's enough for them to run just in terms of compliance with the design. This is the key task. We don't see a task. But if actually is built-in documentation, there's no no reference to any documents, no justification. We've analyzed this problem. We can see this problem. It's a project documentation or as build documentation. That's his past state expert assessment. Is there reference to the code specification and procedure of entrance control of the materials? No reference there. No alternative as the standard of organization. So designer didn't justify this decision, one's decision. No solution, and didn't check. But you know, the building is built on the detailed drawings and technological documentation, including the project of works and work charts. So it minimizes the risk.
Еще один вопрос, и мы на этом заканчиваем.
So one more question and finalizing the discussion. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Alexey Gorokhov, Association of NPSM. Please prompt us how the industry can be involved in developing technical regulations on safety of construction materials and products, and who to get the project, actual draft of the first draft of this regulatory standards. Well, there is no draft of first edition so far, is not available. Till the end of November, the subcommission, government subcommission on technical regulation will decide this, and actually the developer will be in Promtorg. So the work on this hasn't been started, and I think you can join in and take part in this work via the Committee on Technical Regulation. And so we are in close touch with Minstroi and FAVFSS, and will be involved in the Coordination Council on Technical Regulation. So planning suggests main players in manufacturers of built-in materials association to bring them at Russian Union of Industrials and Entrepreneurs and bring the Standard and Ministry of Construction and have a joint talk, and to see what's the vision of the regulations from each of the participants. So we can speak about European system, because we know the European system very well, because we've been studying it in Europe. And we've got the documents so we can share them. So we are going to arrange this kind of meeting, so to speak about the concept of the regulation. So we invite our colleagues from Eurasian Economic Union, from Belarus and from Kazakhstan, Armenia, and Kyrgyzstan. Will start this work jointly with Minstroi, Ministry of Construction, and we'll be mailing out all this information. I'll be inviting all the players and be notifying you. Thanks, we'll support you. Thank you. Just summing up, about our today's meeting. So agree that a lot of work is undergone on standardization and Roman. Actually, the people are not indifferent. There's a lot of concern. A lot of professional experts are involved in this work, in this joint work, which let's achieve the best result in present conditions. Do you agree with me, colleagues? Yes, I agree with you. Thanks a lot to everybody. I'd like to thank the Ministry of Construction and Federal Center of Standardization, this bill, running this dialogue recently for their actually attention they pay to our proposals, and this actually is the basis for our joint success. Thank you. I invite you to the next session at 3:30. It's a modular construction and experience of wooden
как официальное издание Европейской организации качества. С 1996 года издается в России под названием Business Excellence – деловое совершенство. На его страницах с авторскими статьями и интервью выступило множество известных отечественных и зарубежных предпринимателей, топ-менеджеров, мотивационных спикеров. Уникальные проекты журнала «Бренд», «Идея, дело, развитие, успех», «History» подробно раскрывают перед читателями ключевые этапы становления и путь к успеху самых прославленных компаний. Business Excellence – авторитетная площадка для взаимодействия государства и бизнеса. Журнал выступает ключевым информационным партнером профессиональных форумов. Крупнейшие компании организуют производственные экскурсии для подготовки специальных репортажей. Business Excellence органично вписался в семейство изданий РИА «Стандарты и качество» и занимает высокую позицию среди профессиональных деловых изданий страны. Представляем журнал Business Excellence. Учрежден в Великобритании в 1993 году как официальное издание Европейской организации качества. С 1996 года издается в России под названием Business Excellence – деловое совершенство. На его страницах с авторскими статьями и интервью выступило множество известных отечественных и зарубежных предпринимателей, топ-менеджеров, мотивационных спикеров. Уникальные проекты журнала «Бренд», «Идея, дело, развитие, успех», «History» подробно раскрывают перед читателями ключевые этапы становления и путь к успеху самых прославленных компаний. Business Excellence – авторитетная площадка для взаимодействия государства и бизнеса. Журнал выступает ключевым информационным партнером профессиональных форумов. Крупнейшие компании организуют производственные экскурсии для подготовки специальных репортажей. Business Excellence органично вписался в семейство изданий РИА «Стандарты и качество» и занимает высокую позицию среди профессиональных деловых изданий страны. Представляем журнал Business Excellence. Учрежден в Великобритании в 1993 году как официальное издание Европейской организации качества. С 1996 года издается в России под названием Business Excellence – деловое совершенство. На его страницах с авторскими статьями и интервью выступило множество известных отечественных и зарубежных предпринимателей, топ-менеджеров, мотивационных спикеров. Уникальные проекты журнала «Бренд», «Идея, дело, развитие, успех», «History» подробно раскрывают перед читателями ключевые этапы становления и путь к успеху самых прославленных компаний. Business Excellence – авторитетная площадка для взаимодействия государства и бизнеса. Журнал выступает ключевым информационным партнером профессиональных форумов. Крупнейшие компании организуют производственные экскурсии для подготовки специальных репортажей. Business Excellence органично вписался в семейство изданий РИА «Стандарты и качество» и занимает высокую позицию среди профессиональных деловых изданий страны. Представляем журнал Business Excellence. Учрежден в Великобритании в 1993 году как официальное издание Европейской организации качества. С 1996 года издается в России под названием Business Excellence – деловое совершенство. На его страницах с авторскими статьями и интервью выступило множество известных отечественных и зарубежных предпринимателей, топ-менеджеров, мотивационных спикеров. Уникальные проекты журнала «Бренд», «Идея, дело, развитие, успех», «History» подробно раскрывают перед читателями ключевые этапы становления и путь к успеху самых прославленных компаний. Business Excellence – авторитетная площадка для взаимодействия государства и бизнеса. Журнал выступает ключевым информационным партнером профессиональных форумов. Крупнейшие компании организуют производственные экскурсии для подготовки специальных репортажей. Business Excellence органично вписался в семейство изданий РИА «Стандарты и качество» и занимает высокую позицию среди профессиональных деловых изданий страны. Представляем журнал Business Excellence. Учрежден в Великобритании в 1993 году как официальное издание Европейской организации качества. С 1996 года издается в России под названием Business Excellence – деловое совершенство. На его страницах с авторскими статьями и интервью выступило множество известных отечественных и зарубежных предпринимателей, топ-менеджеров, мотивационных спикеров. Уникальные проекты журнала «Бренд», «Идея, дело, развитие, успех», «History» подробно раскрывают перед читателями ключевые этапы становления и путь к успеху самых прославленных компаний. Business Excellence – авторитетная площадка для взаимодействия государства и бизнеса. Журнал выступает ключевым информационным партнером профессиональных форумов. Крупнейшие компании организуют производственные экскурсии для подготовки специальных репортажей. Business Excellence органично вписался в семейство изданий РИА «Стандарта и качества» и занимает высокую позицию среди профессиональных деловых изданий страны. Представляем журнал Business Excellence. Учрежден в Великобритании в 1993 году как официальное издание Европейской организации качества. С 1996 года издается в России под названием Business Excellence – деловое совершенство. На его страницах с авторскими статьями и интервью выступило множество известных отечественных и зарубежных предпринимателей, топ-менеджеров, мотивационных спикеров. Уникальные проекты журнала «Бренд», «Идея, дело, развитие, успех», «History» подробно раскрывают перед читателями ключевые этапы становления и путь к успеху самых прославленных компаний. Business Excellence – авторитетная площадка для взаимодействия государства и бизнеса. Журнал выступает ключевым информационным партнером профессиональных форумов. Крупнейшие компании организуют производственные экскурсии для подготовки специальных репортажей. Business Excellence органично вписался в семейство изданий РИА «Стандарта и качества» и занимает высокую позицию среди профессиональных деловых изданий страны. Представляем журнал «Business Excellence». Учрежден в Великобритании в 1993 году как официальное издание Европейской организации качества. С 1996 года издается в России под названием «Business Excellence» – «Деловое совершенство». На его страницах с авторскими статьями и интервью выступило множество известных отечественных и зарубежных предпринимателей, топ-менеджеров, мотивационных спикеров. Уникальные проекты журнала «Бренд», «Идея, дело, развитие, успех», «History» подробно раскрывают перед читателями ключевые этапы становления и путь к успеху самых прославленных компаний. Business Excellence – авторитетная площадка для взаимодействия государства и бизнеса. Журнал выступает ключевым информационным партнером профессиональных форумов. Крупнейшие компании организуют производственные экскурсии для подготовки специальных репортажей. Business Excellence органично вписался в семейство изданий РИА «Стандарты и качество» и занимает высокую позицию среди профессиональных деловых изданий страны. Представляем журнал «Business Excellence». Учрежден в Великобритании в 1993 году как официальное издание Европейской организации качества. С 1996 года издается в России под названием «Business Excellence» – «Деловое совершенство». На его страницах с авторскими статьями и интервью выступило множество известных отечественных и зарубежных предпринимателей, топ-менеджеров, мотивационных спикеров. Уникальные проекты журнала «Бренд», «Идея, дело, развитие, успех», «History» подробно раскрывают перед читателями ключевые этапы становления и путь к успеху самых прославленных компаний. Business Excellence – авторитетная площадка для взаимодействия государства и бизнеса. Журнал выступает ключевым информационным партнером профессиональных форумов. Крупнейшие компании организуют производственные экскурсии для подготовки специальных репортажей. Business Excellence органично вписался в семейство изданий РИА «Стандарты и качество» и занимает высокую позицию среди профессиональных деловых изданий страны.
Да, уважаемые коллеги, добрый вечер.
Dear colleagues, good evening. We continue our event, and I would like to present the first part related to the standards and technical regulation and the construction. And now there is a practical part with the speakers, and there are progressive local companies, and also we have people from the Western Hemisphere who will be connecting via remote connection. So I would like to welcome the participants. It's Deputy for the Material Metallurgy Deputy Director. He is the first person who is going to connect remotely. Then Mr. Evgeny Volov, he is the Vice President of Techno Corporation, and then the Dr. Alexander Salonikovich via remote connection, and then Director of Nizhny Davtogvozdev, Mr. Andrei Kusivanov, and then Vice President of the DNV for working with Russia and Kazakhstan, Mr. Andrei Maslenik via video conference communication, and then Mr. Vyacheslav Lagovsky, and then a partner and global leader for the design and construction of the companies, Mr. Aaron Roberts, and deputy head of the Sectoral Committee number 460, Mr. Igor Kalybin, via remote connection. And time-wise, we are restricted in our presentations. If there will be only presentations without Q&A, and the presentations will be available online in electronic form, and then the floor is given to Roman Kuprin. You have 10 minutes. Go ahead. Colleagues, good afternoon. I'm happy to welcome you all at the International Technological Forum for the Russian Standardization, dedicated to the dangers of standardization, and I hope that this event will be a continuation for all the activities that are maintained by Rosstandart agency when it comes to standardization. I don't know if you are able to see my slides. Yes, the presentation is visible, and I would like to say, I think that one of the most effective sectors of the industry in the interests of everybody, it is the construction materials industry, and the most active part and is taken by two ministries: the Ministry of Industry and Trade, which is responsible for the manufacturing of construction material, and the Ministry of Construction, which is in charge of technical regulation in that area. Therefore, it should be noted that when it comes to technical regulation in Russia, when it comes to the construction materials, little has changed over the last 2 years. Unfortunately, the defining technical regulation for safety is missing, and all of the work is done in the framework of Ordinance number 982, which unfortunately has a limited array of action, and currently the edition of Ordinance number 982 currently covers a significant amount of materials. Mostly it's cement and heating radiators, where which is subject to certification, also raw materials, the dry construction mixes, and also the Ordinance number 982 lists the necessary construction materials where elements of technical regulation need to be introduced, and actually the costs according to which the conformity assessment takes place and the information which is located on the site of the Eurostandard is given. Also, currently, we have put in a new edition of Ordinance number 982, where we have expanded the list of the construction materials and items. And the new edition of the 982 envisages the indication of what those construction materials are and how it should be taken place and in accordance to which cost. And it should be noted that this year a decision has been adopted to develop technical regulation for the safety of the buildings and structures, and this year a decision has been taken about a parallel movement, and the technical regulation for the safety of buildings and structures is going to be adopted, and one for the safety of the building materials. And in this respect, we should like to pay attention to the fact that the technical regulation concerning the safety of building and structures has a certain priority, and the motion should be not in parallel forward, but there should be a primacy of the technical regulations. And in the first place, this particular act should be taken, and only thereafter an act about the safety of the construction materials should be enacted. But because the requirements to the constructed facilities as such determine the requirement to the elements out of which the certain facility consists. Therefore, in connection with that, the first one, first priority are the standards to be developed, and in the framework of 982, document number 982, the priority was given to national standards. But currently, we have to focus our attention on those materials, on the intergovernmental standards. And here a set of standards is indicated, which are currently unfortunately now only 20% of intergovernmental costs are harmonized in the community, and only 20% of national costs are updated, and the entire list of the costs is over 400 units. And in order to achieve those tasks, we need to lower the barriers and timeline for the development of intergovernmental standards. I think this is the task which should be a prevailing one for a standard, especially because the Interstate Construction Materials Committee is led by Belarus, and that's one of the initiators for the development of the intergovernmental technical standard. When it comes to communications, in the construction area and technical regulation, our two technical committees are number 426, 465, and 144 are currently interfacing quite actively, and it should be noted. And in the framework of the number 144, which I am heading, the reorganization is already finished, and the number of people in our technical committee is 100 persons, and we have achieved that by identifying the area which we can move over to another technical committee, number 41, where the production of the transparent structures has been transferred, and everything that is related to that. So on the one hand, we have specified the work of the committee number 41, where the glass containers have been added, and also reduced the load on number 144. And the priority goals of the interface is the development and implementation of the roadmaps related to the improvement of the technical regulation system for the standardization documents for the professional community, and establishment of a coordination council for rate setting and standard setting, and a system of standards. So like I said, the Committee 465 has a field where it overlaps with us. And in spite of the fact that Ministry of Industry and Trade is overseeing the entire area of the materials production, for Committee 465 there is a significant volume of structures, including the factory-built ones, such as concrete items, and also the construction material to which concrete belongs. And so it's an important field of our interface, and should those construction materials be identified as an area for a single technical committee, then maybe we could be involved with the standardization under the control of our both entities, the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Industry, and the technical regulation covers many issues, and in the framework of a 10-minute presentation, it's impossible to cover them all, but all the participants of today's presentation will probably be able to disclose the issues that I have not been able to cover, and that will serve our further development of the standardization system and technical regulation. Thank you very much. Roman, thank you very much for this presentation. And now I'm giving floor to Vice President of Technical Cooperation, Mr. Evgeny Volov. He is currently in the room. Hello, dear colleagues. Those who are present in this wonderful room on this remarkable day, and those who are connected to us online, I would like to share with you the ideas related to standardization on the part when it comes to the manufacturing of the construction materials, and tell you what we see to that effect. In the field of regulation, there are 4 important ministries at work: Ministry of Construction, Ministry of Industry, and Ministry for Emergency Situations. And significantly, how open they are for feedback determines the speed of the development of the industry and construction as a whole. In the field of construction, we are seeing 4 main federal laws So it's the law number 384 about safety, number 123 and number 144, and it is important to note that there are mandatory standards and there are voluntary standards, and it should be mentioned that they are conditionally voluntary, and an example from real life, if you enter a newly constructed building, the residents may note that the engineering systems, tubing, etc., are not installed in the correct way, and but the construction company may say that it's not a mandatory standard, therefore we are not going to consider this issue. So they are tentatively voluntary, and the designers have not understood this comment. So we have made an explanation for them in Russian to make it understood what voluntary means. And so it's an important statement which should be taken into account. When it comes to law number 1A59 on technical regulation, there is a government ordinance which has been in this transitional stage for many years now, and we are all expecting the emergence of the technical regulation. We are now seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and it has been mentioned, and we will be happy to get involved. And an important issue from the point of view of the manufacturers of the building materials, over 30% of the products are being moved between Eurasian Economic Community countries, and it would be very good if those standards were harmonized. And we have recently, for example, raised the issue of the facade structures. For example, in Russia there are standards applicable to that, and in Kazakhstan there are none. And it would be interesting to discuss how they would appear as promptly as possible in Kazakhstan in order to be able to bring materials to Kazakhstan. So we should wait up to 3 years, and only then an intergovernmental ghost would appear. And we have been told how much effort should be one should envisage to spend on that. So it's the simplest possible way, probably. So we should agree between each other. We are expecting active work in the field of this technical regulation. And one more interesting idea is that we have recently met scientific institutions which are working at the standards, and funding is allocated for 1 year, and they can see the money in spring, and then in the fall they would be able to see the money. And so how, during that time, should the scientific research work be conducted in order to be able to assess the life cycle, safety and comfort in the field of the construction materials? And no R&D is made over 6 months, so we should check how it's done. So at least 1 year is required. Good if it's 1 year and a half. So our proposal is to redefine the R&D, how the funding of R&D projects is performed. And the last year there has been a meeting on SP54. It's an important document. And now many authoritative people are saying, well, it's a bad document because we should be moving toward the low-rise building. And why have we got together by the end of designing of development of this document? So what kind of R&D should be conducted? So in this manner, I have a simple proposal. So we should put together a working group so that professional community members would participate in it, determine certain strategy. And R&D then would be funded maybe during 1 year and not during 2 to 3 years, and then it will go at a much prompter rate. And also another important thing, we mentioned the Coordination Council, and this should lead to the fact that the timeline for creating the normative documents should increase. And there has been a speaker on BIN, and so we're taking a BIN project, and the designer is joining it, and then all the local requirements are being connected to it. So it's not just a big document, but it's a specific standard for a specific structure. So it's achievable when it comes to information modeling and development of digital services.
I know that there is a lot of work done in this area. On our part, we've been actively involved. We would like to be involved in this as an industry to develop joint strategy within the industry and in construction. Colleagues, thanks a lot for today's event and opportunity to voice our concerns. I think it's crucial for our joint development. Thanks for your attention. Evgeny Petrovich, thank you very much for your presentation and for your information. What you've been speaking about is about the timelines of R&D work, such as developing standards on your own. It has to be fully ready-made material that will be ready for its operation, or it should be some tests required. And so I think the management understands this. It will pay attention to this. The next speaker, Professor, Canadian University of Laval, Dr. Alexander Selenkovich, about online. Alexander, please. Good afternoon. Can you hear and see me? So if you're closer to the microphone, it'll be yet better. Better, like this? Yes, we can hear now. Good afternoon. Andrei Kharitonov asked me to share the cutting-edge experience in wooden architecture. It's a light framework structures. This information might be of use for expediting resolving the current issues of wooden construction in Russia. But just to translate to Russian and to implement, we need to require it's required to set the common technology. It is a language just to speak the same language. So it's not an easy thing. We've got a vocabulary. ISO 707 about addition. This edition, we considered this one, and we translated into Russian. It was published in English and Russian last year. And so not only one example of fruitful cooperation. I got the message that the slides are not shared. I'll retry this. It's on the first slide. Can you see the first slide? Yes, we can see the first slide. Norms in wooden construction. So, what I want to say, this example of a fruitful cooperation, but actually reveals the shortcomings in using Russian, for instance, certain Russian language in the ISO system. So I would like to address these issues in my short presentation. It'll be interesting for all the stakeholders. Last week, I was in more details about Techno 105 in Sverdlovsk about implementation of wooden construction, wooden building construction, buildings construction in U.S. and Canada. Maybe someone missed out this presentation. So the first series, there was a number of points, issues in wooden construction. First of all, is fire safety and structural protection using the mostly seismic unstable regions in the far north. So also the wind loads issues, and actually it opens the prospects of hotels and dormitories and for military people, and also the longevity of the buildings. It means protection from humidity during construction, running also repair works, and replacement of damaged and outdated elements of the structure of the structural elements. It's fighting mold and rot and other things. And speaking about the longevity, we know that wooden architecture has got long life story. So some monuments of architecture in Europe and Asia. In this slide, we can see well-known cult buildings. But it's one-story buildings, but also a lot of structures of multi-story structures. But low-rise building construction was widespread in U.S. and Canada. There's lots of examples of commercial warehouses, 8, 9-story buildings built in these countries before the Second World War. Prior to introduction of modern construction codes in terms of fire safety. So till now, the height of the buildings was limited by 4 stories. A light framework wooden structure, light framework construction. They consist of materials of small cross section. This kind of structures can catch fire in case if there is no fire protection. Also, the beam timber constructions consist of beams of 14 to 15 centimeter thickness elements, or some elements of big cross sections. Actually, these structures they are less vulnerable to catching fire. It's, sometimes we can see this term. It's a timber construction. It's hardly flammable buildings, but actually the height of these wooden buildings was limited till 4 stories, and only 2015 saw an increase of the number of stories till 6. And also depends on the access to the buildings. If there is more access to the building from different parts of this, the height. So, and now there is a construction code specification were published in Canada and US that allow for using the structural elements. Now they use called not beam, but they're called massive structures. And American construction code, within the framework of this new classification, the buildings up to 9 floors can be admitted. So for buildings till 12 stories, as a part of open walls. In case of full encapsulation of the wooden elements, the 18-story building up to 82 meters high. As in Canada, you can see The height of the building limited to by 12 stories in case of complete encapsulation of the wooden elements, and there is a harmonization process is considered. What is massive timber? Now, can show it in one slide. Some of them should be well known to you. So for the last 12 years, the massive timber has increased by 5 years in the last years in Canada. And now in Canada, can I see allowed 1 million cubic meters of these kind of products, and it's increasing annually. It's a massive timber. Is used in building of 550 sites. It's mostly office and commercial buildings. So more and more school buildings, and also cultural and entertainment facilities, sports facilities, and also housing buildings, and also bridges and other sites. Thanks to change in norm framework, the engineers and architects, they don't stop at have achieved in Vancouver. They built as well a building of 40 stories high, stories tall, and this is thanks to financial information support by the government, and $100 billions of dollars were invested in this, and the economy sector is allocated for building the sites of informational system and of demonstration facilities. Now we are getting to an important point: how to use the experience that has been accumulated abroad and to implement it in practice. A great role is played by not only translation of the text is important, but also the joint development of the documentation is important. And this international ISO international organization is in place that actually claims to help these people. So there is 3 languages. 3 official languages for ISO is English, French, and Russian. And the number of organizations is stated, and it is supposed to hear all the voices. How is it implemented? We will give an example how it goes in reality. It's the beginning last year in the ISO 59 on terminology work. Where first vocabulary was published. It's in 2 languages was published, but it can be the final one. Why I can say? About directives, I saw a directive. The actual goals of the organization that each international standard should be the result of consensus that will meet the global requirements. As you know, and the practical is the standard has to be published at least in 2 languages, and uses the advantage of using several languages, especially in these practical standards. Nevertheless, in a recent meeting with the ISO Secretariat members, it was said that management of ISO doesn't support, but actually is against 3 languages in all the standards because of commercial hardships. And the standards that several years were developed in 3 languages in the ISO 18 committee, when the results are published in 3-column shape. Now they are not going to be published in unified standard. They're going to be developed in English standard, then they'll be translated into French, and after publishing in English version, they'll be submitted for translation into Russian language. The ISO considers this all 3 versions. 3 language versions of the standards considered equal, But it's to make it viable, we need to involve the representatives of all three languages to be involved in the development. The Russian, in reality, Russian language is not considered at the development stage. And so from the beginning of development, it's all done in English and French language. So what's going on with the Russian language? Why this Russian language ISO turned out to be in the third role, so it's rated the third. Why have we, how have we come to this, and why so management doesn't consider Russian in its directive as the equal language? I think we need to consider this point, and we need to learn the international experience. Remember that Russian wooden buildings experience is great, and because in Russia there's a bridge and a church built in wooden elements. Thanks for your presentation. Thank you. And that you raised this issue of Russian language and the standardization. I think it's very important for the Russian Federation in general. How to harmonize standards if the Russian language is becoming is discarded and become not important in the international arena. And so representatives who can hear us, just help us to keep the Russian language there. Evgeny Volov, Director, Mr. Dmitry Vladimirovich Kuzyvanov. Good afternoon. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. I would like to share our experience in standardization. So to share the problems when we bump into in the area of industry related to concrete and reinforced concrete structures. But first of all, we need to give you impression of what are we dealing with. We are dealing with a whole system of documents that regulate this industry of implementation. So one of the most construction material for modern buildings and structures. And the system is very branched and sort of vast. And the basis actually the code specification for use of concrete and reinforced concrete that specifies all the requirements. And this document sets the first level references that lead us to other documents that regulate our activity to this or that extent. And our document is with a kind of long history, starting in 1946. So in 18, they'll give another review. In there was a review of this document in 2018. Now it will be in 2023. In 2023, we'll see another edition of this document. Maybe it's a machine-readable document, but we go to the history of this document. So to change, it's hard to change this document, to adapt it for this kind of complex industry like ours, and such conservative industry as construction. But maybe in the future it will be so. But it's not enough to deal just with one document. We need to deal with the whole hierarchy of this document. So we got a great number of family of further on standards and specifications about seismic loads, deformation, so hydrotechnical construction, for road construction, for fire resistant, light concrete, fiber concrete, structural monolith buildings, huge panel buildings, and huge gantry, huge bay buildings, documents, also all kinds of requirements on longevity and stability of the structures, a whole family of documents on repair and enhancement, enforcement, actually in arches, and the system of protective materials, repair materials, a number of a family of documents of quality assurance control. I can separately consider block on construction materials, and as another block in the national standards with the requirements of the materials test methods. We speak about concrete mixtures, its components, all kinds of fillers, also the reinforcement steel. So we've got all requirements to reinforce concrete, its pipes and slabs and columns. There's a whole set of norm documents for concrete and reinforced concrete. So then we've got a set of rules. So we've got 381 document. We've got 27 set of rules, code of specification, over 28 of them. So as you consider 5 set of rules.
Speaking about the national standards, the costs for concretes and reinforced concrete structures, such as technical conditions, testing methods, and requirements to the design, to the structures, etc. It's about 160 standards. 40 to 45 documents are being revised every year, and so it's quite fast. It's a fast-track process. And what kind of standardization programs have we identified to date for ourselves? There are common problems that we have identified still in 2018, based on the Reinforced Concrete Association, and we've been involved with a dialogue, and we have identified the problematics which is related to standardization, and the sectoral coordination program has been identified, and planning of the work for standardization and scientific substantiation of the work has been also touched upon as a topic, and also the explanation about the changes. It doesn't always reach the consumer fast enough. They don't have time to track the changes and understand why these or that changes have happened. And some problems have been summarized, and the users of the standards do not always know who developed the standards and to whom they should address. Not always it comes back in the form as it should be, and also it's a personnel-related, staffing-related, human resource problem, and of course it's difficult to hire people to trace so many documents, and the colleagues from the Federal Construction Center Agency have tried to discuss it today already, and based on our sectoral association, we have tried to discuss this problematic as well. Not many people understand what should be introduced along the lines of the entire system, and many things that are being implemented are always founded from the technical and economic point of view. And coming back to the key issues, It's the sectoral coordination problems that have been already stated, and it has been stated before that we have Committee 144 and 165 materials and 165 construction, and the scale of the problem is, however, a lot greater, because also the work concerning committee that are dealt with by committee number 400 has been identified and separated from others. Also, technical committee number 375, which is overseen by metallurgy specialists who formulate requirements to the concrete reinforcement, also nuclear builders. And the most important thing for us all, technical committee for us all, is 418, the road concerning road construction and maintenance, and they have new requirements that they put forward to concrete and concrete mixes, to cement and to other things. And for us, there are many examples, and the road builders have released a new cost for the crushed rock, which is used for road construction. And the difference is that they have moved over to different sieve cells, square-shaped cells in a sieve for the filters. And the pellets are different size and different shape than they used to be before. So it's construction and building, and the quarries that make crushed rock, produce crushed rock, they make 60% of crushed rock for the roads and 40% for general construction purposes. And it's important for them to have two types of the equipment, and there is a directive task to unify that system. And now there is a task being delegated from the top down, and together with the Federal Construction Center, we have undertaken some studies, and shortly this topic will be developed, and it should have been thought about in advance. And there is a problem, this is a problematic that should be dealt with. There is also the conjunction of the committees number 165 and 484, and the basic traits related to concrete are concentrated in one committee. We cannot delegate just one piece into one committee and move over control method to 465. It's a complex problem which should be working under unified supervision and unified coordination. It's not our national specifics, and I saw there are also many subcommittees, for example, TC71 for for the concrete, reinforced concrete. The standards are also developed, distributed by steel reinforcements and the concrete, and the coordination is less developed than in our case, and they are do not always follow what's being done at the other committees, and we should establish better interplay between the interface between the committees. And we're also another thing that we do in terms of the coordination and in terms of working with long-term projects for the planning of standardization is at our main institute that we are developing a thematic plan. Before, in the Soviet Union, there was a nationwide coordination committee which was determining the agenda and distributing it further throughout the country, involvement of the universities, etc. And the system was operational. And last year we have implemented it, we are developing it now, and now as I'm summarizing those areas, There are many tasks related to the new construction materials, to the construction acceleration technologies, and many automation things, and it's a problem that should be resolved in a proper way, and we should create different coordination councils, as it was stated before during this session. And as I'm summarizing, I think that there is we are really trying to update the standards, develop the new system, but of course it's a necessary thing, and there should be a mechanism that should be accompanying it, and this unified electronic platform and body for coordination are necessary, and we can only welcome what has been stated today, and only hope that next year it will start working actively. Also, when it comes to coordination, we should not only coordinate the standardization stage, but also work before the standardization stage, and the expert community should be working at an earlier stage. There should be maybe temporary working groups. So there are many comprehensive issues, and I hope that they will be soon resolved. So now we are going back to the next presentation. Now it's we have the DNV Vice President, Mr. Nils Anders Mastri. Please make it 8 minutes if possible. Yes, I would be happy to do that. Can you hear me? Yes, well, I represent DNVAS, which has been founded 1864. And since then, we've been working at the technical safety of the ships, and also marine-based and oil and gas production structures. And as a reflection of those technologies and those services, those are standards for all types of the technologies, and the oil and gas sector and navigation have their specifics, and there is more about civil construction on the dry land, and there are certain parallels, and we are checking standards, looking at standards not as the end, but as means for project implementation. So we are searching for the safest and most effective standards. And should those standards be already in existence, we do not duplicate them, but we are just drafting these standards when we see certain gaps, when we see some kind of a misunderstanding on the part of our clients. In October is a standards month for me, because in 1917, October is when DNV and Gazprom have signed a contract and an agreement that Gazprom can freely select the standards for our company and implement them as STO inside its company, and I've signed it with Markella 4 years ago in St. Petersburg, and I regret that I cannot be with you now. I hope that it will still happen in the future, and this is as well connected with the fact that Gazprom is very productively using our standards for the implementation of the expert pipeline projects, the Blue Stream, Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2, and Turkish Stream. And Our associations are independent organizations which are by 100% independent, not only on our clients, but also on all the states, including our state in Oslo, where we have headquarters, and we've been working in Norway for quite some time. And it's not that we are, the state share is very limited, 0. We are working more dynamically, more promptly than ISO. We are more flexible, and ISO has a very broad scope and very consensus-based organization. And our clients have some needs and some requirements which should be considered more promptly, to be reacted to, get feedback more promptly, and also because today, unfortunately, I can have to admit that when it comes to power generation sector, it's a little bit politicized. Still, our cooperation in the standards area is not is something that should be free from politics and their impact, and we should limit our work, our standard within our countries, and also we should very flexibly and with a goodwill cooperate and approach and not allow for the spread of international standards in the national space for the maximum technical acceleration of the implementation of the new projects and lowest possible influence of political situation. Because we are all for the technical safety of our clients, irrespective of where they work and where they are located. And I would like to conclude by congratulating you all and Standard Inform, which is working on the basis of the Gazprom proposal, and they have started working after 2017. They have undertaken the signing of this document for the register in order to use it in Russian throughout the entire space of the Russian Federation. There was a lot of work to have been done, and because this contract exists now, it means that our standards for all the clients in Russia who want to have access to our standards in the oil and gas sector, be it oil and gas or maritime navigation, they can, via the Standard Inform, enter in the register by 100% legally our standards for the project implementation within the Russian space. Thank you for your attention, and I am happy to continue to listen to the discussion. Thank you, Nils. It's a very interesting information and a very interesting experience to be shared. And now I would like to give floor to Mr. Vyacheslav Blagovsky from Evgeny Research and Development Institute. Where is the presentation? I am representing the Evgeny Hydrotechnic Institute, and it's a head organization in the hydrotechnical construction in the Russian Federation, and I'm also representing the subcommittee number 12 of the technical committee number 65. And the hydrotechnical structures. There is a brief extract from SP58 for hydrotechnical constructions, main provisions. The main thing is that the hydrotechnical constructions are those that are subject to the effects of the water environment, and hence the specifics of those structures. That's the wave impact, ice impact, the flow and freezing, different types of horizontal loads and dilution of the base and deterioration of the base, and the specifics of the construction of the hydrotechnical structures, which has been in progress for many years. And for marine-based ones, it's the winter conditions and many others. Also, the water reservoir or the snow bulk or ice bulk impact, and there is impact of various documents for hydrotechnical structures. So I will try to dwell on the specific documents a little bit further along the line. The experience of hydrotechnical construction is also governed by the hydrotechnical building code, and specially adopted there is laws. There is a transcript from the there is a ninth item, which is also very important, is the port hydrotechnical structures, and also separately we have here the systems for water supply and the first and second class structures for technical supply to nuclear power and heat and thermal power electric power plants.
Separately, there is a laws about safety of hydrotechnical structures. Federal law 117, what is it, in 1977, adopted 1977, with actually a lot of amendments and supplements. And there is 9 actually sets of rules and regulations related to hydrotechnical structures. So actually there is a governmental decree that states the criteria of classification of hydrotechnical structures. Hydrotechnical structures are classified by various criteria. So there are 4 criteria, depending on the height and type of the basement ground, depends on the lifetime operation, depends on the waterhead, maximum waterhead, and about the effects, possible effects of the hydrotechnical emergency situations, accidents. So speak about the set of regulations related to hydrotechnical structures. I'm not actually touching upon national standards, because one small presentation cannot encompass everything. So about the set of rules and regulations. Rules. Actually, there's a set of rules that are SNPs. Actually, it's construction norms and standards and regulations. SNP regulations, construction regulations. Now we've got regulation on the basement of hydrotechnical structures. Now, so there's been actually modifications that refer to hydrotechnical materials in hydrotechnical construction, and it describes in detail the rules of their use. Also, there are two appendices about the performance and the quality control of synthetic materials. It's actually a standard of 2018 concerning the ice loads, actually a set of rules that affect the justification of the ground of reliability of the structure. It's been derived this set of rules based on the SNP, and not only Institute was taken part in developing, also the Institute of Arctic and Antarctica and Polytechnic University. We jointly were actually considering this set of rules, and so we reconsidered the area of the section about concerning the ice loads. This set of rules, the dams of ground materials. It's an old-dated set of rules of the 2012. One speaks about geosynthetic materials use. It says a classification of geosynthetic materials and the techniques of laboratory tests, water and geosynthetic materials, ground materials. Also, there were points about stability, stability to seismic impacts. Also, there were points on the geophysical diagnostics of construction in northern area. Actually, one of the appendices there relate to the dams of construction materials. So I'm not going to dwell of concrete and reinforced concrete dams, but there is a separate section dedicated to it. But because I'm short of time, I'm not going to dwell on it. Well, for some reason, it's not flipping. It's not moving on. It's a set of rules 58 was developed in 2019, and which gives actual modification to this. It's a set of rules that was developed as actualization of the Act in SNPs, construction standards and rules. Norms and rules. Actually, these ones didn't exist before. And set of rules to 290. You can see the pictures of Sanashushinsk hydropower plant water drain. I'm not going to dwell on it, but it's very important document because the structure of water throughput facilities, they provide the reliability of the dam. It's slid back. It's not coming back. So could we go one step back? Could you help me with that? Yes, the equipment has got tired, it's fatigue at the end of the day. So this it's a hydrotechnical structures. It's a construction for construction and seismic regions. It was developed for 15 years, the first ones. So the first edition was issued in 2012, and only 2017 saw the finalization of this document. Actually, it's clarification, expanding of Chapter 8 of hydrotechnical construction on the set of rules for 14 in the seismic areas. And finally, a set of rules for marine stationary platforms. It's absolutely a document. It was created based on the experience of all Russian oil producing platforms like Prozlomna platform in Barents Sea and Sakhalin Shelf, 5 platforms in Sakhalin Shelf, and Berkut, also on Caspian and Baltic Sea platforms experience. That's what I wanted to tell you about our technical committee work on development of the set of rules in the area of hydrotechnical construction. It's a great, colossal constructions. Thanks, thanks a lot for presentation. Now you'll need maybe device for construction, because this the next presentation is in an English language. So who need, please use the simultaneous translation. The speaker is a partner, Enersenenian, global leader, EY, Ilan Roberts. Can you hear us? The floor is yours, Ilan Roberts.
I can. Andre, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much for having me today. My name is Aaron Roberts, and I'm the global leader for the engineering and construction industry for Ernst & Young, and it's a real pleasure speaking to you today. I just have a few moments and wanted to talk a little bit about how we as a firm have been looking at sustainability and how it's becoming a business imperative for the engineering and construction industry, and really the role that standards play in driving behaviors that we think can contribute to a sustainable future. As Andre pointed out, the materials I'm sharing today are in English. I apologize for that, but we can get these slides distributed for your later review in Russian. But the analysis that I'll share with you today, there's a lot of slides. I really want to touch on just a few, but it's the result of an analysis that we performed on how European building products, construction materials, and construction companies have been addressing this drive towards sustainable infrastructure. And so I want to share some of the results of that with you, and we'll only touch on a few slides in the short time I have here. When we look at it in total, the main objective that we believe is creating a situation where stakeholders outside of regulators can contribute to the development of a sustainable future. And that means a broad-based approach that incentivizes companies in the broader global sectors to really contribute to the improvement of our the resiliency and changing the trend of climate change. And so what this analysis is intended to do is look at those megatrends that we see emerging, how those megatrends are driving and are linked to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, how construction companies can contribute to the achievement of those goals, and how through that it can be a central part of their corporate strategy. And so you can see here depicted many of these mega trends you'll be very familiar with in terms of the growing and aging population, climate change, the increase in regulation and activism around the world, changes in consumer behaviors, the use of digital technologies and the like, really being an accelerant to our ability to address these issues. And these are very clear. There's several slides after this that will sort of go through some level of depth on each topic. Don't have the time to do that today. But you can clearly see, I think, very well understood that there are the consequences of global warming that we need to urgently address. So what we believe is how at least European companies have focused their efforts is by identifying where they align to the Sustainable Development Goals developed by the United Nations. These goals were 17 different goals with 169 different distinct targets, and really set out a blueprint for solving the world's dire problems, of which sustainable infrastructure and climate change being one of the key. But you'll see here, all 17 of them, ending poverty and hunger and creating, societies that are inclusive and equitable, building resilient infrastructure and the like. So you'll see all 17 of them here. Our analysis really looked at major European construction companies and where they align to those goals. And not surprisingly, you'll see the results here. 86% of the companies that we reviewed had a focus on responsible consumption and production. That is, how do they create, a set of goals around reducing their own carbon footprint and the carbon footprint of the products and services that they provide, which would have a resulting positive impact on climate change, and in the process, upgrading infrastructure and creating a clean and sustainable infrastructure. You'll see as we go on, a lot of these are not surprising. Building sustainable cities and communities that are inclusive, that provide for strong economic growth and good health and well-being, which is clearly today in today's environment a high priority, and frankly always has been a high priority for engineering and construction companies, given the risks involved in the work that they do. You'll see that each of these end markets, like suppliers building products and materials, have various focus areas. And you'll see how each of those companies sort of align to those goals. But what I wanted to spend just a minute on is those areas where we believe that construction and engineering firms can have the highest impact. And it runs to these issues of energy transition, resiliency, sustainable cities, resource allocation, and infrastructure development, which can create this new future. I believe, and I've said this many times, that it is going to be the engineering firms and the construction companies that actually physically create our sustainable future. And so they will be the leaders in this. And so what we need to do as an industry globally is to identify a set of standards that can be applied globally that create these incentives for companies to participate in this global change. When you look at the areas of standardization, and I'm going to flip forward several slides here, the trend is to try to drive these behaviors and use companies across the world who can do these things as the primary means for creating that change. Meaning you could create regulation, legislation, laws, and so forth in all of these countries around the world to drive behaviors. But we believe it'd be equally as positive if companies and stakeholders around the world created goals for themselves that understood the business imperative and created a strategy that improved their business while achieving these goals. And that, as I mentioned, we believe requires a set of standards that these companies can identify and measure the achievement of those goals. And so just as a couple of examples, we have a few companies depicted here, Lafarge-Holcim, Saint-Gobain, and Vinci, who have set various goals for themselves around the reduction in carbon emissions, trying to get or reduce the amount of waste materials that are used in construction, committed to certain net zero emissions goals and so forth. But all of these are expressed in different ways, in different means. Different companies create different goals. And so there's really not a cohesive set of standards against which to measure these companies and their performance associated with those goals. There are many standards. There is a veritable alphabet soup of different standard setters, different companies or ratings agencies, different disclosure measures that have been proposed around the world, whether that's the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board or the Global Reporting Initiative. I mentioned the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but there is a host of other task forces coming together to try to create a set of reasonable standards against which companies can apply their disclosures, track their progress, and users of that information, whether that be governments, owners, consumers, investors, et cetera, can evaluate their performance and determine whether they're achieving those goals. And to me, we believe that broad-based drive towards a sustainable future will only be successful if we measure these things, we report them, and we manage our businesses towards achieving those goals. And so for me, that I think is the upshot of my presentation. And Andre, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Erin. That was really important information and few new concepts which are going to turn over the standardization for construction. And as we discussed, your slides will be available online in Russian. It's already translated, but due to the technical issues, they have not been simultaneously presented today. Коллеги, слайды будут доступны онлайн на русском языке, да, к сожалению.
The slides will be available in English and Russian. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to show them in Russian today. And the new standardization in construction is a lot broader. Therefore, it's another challenge for the international cooperation. Another speaker is Mr. Igor Kalybin, Deputy Chair for the Technical Committee number 465. Igor, you are the last speaker today, and therefore time is running out. For most likely there will be no questions in the end, so please go ahead with your presentation. It's impossible to activate the screen. And can you hear me normally? Yes, we are seeing the screen. Sorry, thank you, I am beginning. Thank you for being able to speak with this little information about standardization and geotechnics, and we have to do with the grounds. It's a very specific medium. It has many faces, and there are many tension systems. and it has a lot higher spread of the properties, and due to that, the standardization and rate setting in the geotechnics causes a lot more requirements when it comes to safety of what we are building on the grounds and the structures that interface with the ground. And of course, we are celebrating the 990 years, and the Institute, VIAS Institute, has been established in 1931, and due to Mr. Gerasivanov, who has established that soil can be viewed as a medium, the foundation design requirements have been developed already in 1933. We have developed the first OST standard, sectoral standard 4543 has been established. It's based on the tension on the grounds, and after that it has become the main organization, and the development of the documents based on the limit stages has started in 1962 to 1963. The first set of standards has been established, and already in 1983, 1985, the standards that were used in the standard setting for geotechnical issues has been established, and already by 2006, when the technical regulation law has been issued, the technical regulation has started to live a new life, and TC number 75 was released, and it's responsible for consideration and expertise of the projects, and design of the bases and of the underground structures, and the requirement providing for observing the requirements of the relevant federal law. We are considering during only 3 out of 7 safety during natural processes and environmental safety when it comes to impact on the grounds and during the new construction. So how many documents there are? There are quite a few of them, and we are doing the monitoring every year. There are about 80 of them, about 80 sets of rules and 50 standards, and a huge number of documents that are more or less connected with them. So when we are arranging our priorities and we are arranging the system of standards, we think that we should observe a certain principle of a pyramid. In other words, it's continuity, hierarchy, and space for development. And of course, at the top of the pyramid, there should be a document which has not been developed today. That's a mandatory construction standards. And of course, the quantity of the mandatory standards should be limited. However, at our Technical Committee number 19, the major geotechnical requirements are certain parametric requirements that have no alternative, and all the methodologies and ways of determining the properties should not be mandatory. Therefore, there is a quite extensive structure of the geotechnical documents, and they are all broken into design and construction and operation documents. And there is a greater number of documents which relates to design, and they also subdivided into foundation and underground structure design, the design of engineering protection from hazardous processes, and standards as such, about which we are going to talk to a lesser extent for determining the soil properties. So what are the current challenges affecting the geotechnics? It's the new materials, structures and technologies, and every year and every day we should take account of that, and we should look at the numerical methods and also match it with international standards and international documents, and how we can harmonize it with Eurocodes. In the framework of our committee, it is mostly CMG techniques harmonization, and of course, in the first place, it's the possibility of cooperation, or is it unavoidable cooperation when two systems cannot cooperate? Cannot coexist at the same time, but of course it's based on the limit states, limit values. So harmonization cannot be complete, because for full harmonization we are using different classification of the soils and different definitions and different identifications and different methodological approaches to the calculations and different methods for determining the properties of the soils. However, in our standards, we are trying to use that useful part which exists in the European Code, and which was one of the examples of the harmonization. There is SP 248, which was established, where we tried to put together all the rules and standards that currently exist. And there are several myths related to Eurocodes. Most of the proponents of the Eurocodes, some say that the Eurocodes are more economical. I've been quite harmonious. There is harmony between. There is a 6-meter deep pit with one spacer, and how deep the wall should be. It should have been determined for its sustainability, and what's the leaning force, and in red we see the solutions obtained by the Russian party, and they were using two software contact models and finite elements, and the Russian solutions are exactly within the range which different partial reliability coefficients that are using Eurocode number 7 are actually obtaining as well. And so the geotechnology rate setting envisages finalizing the work that we have established and that we have started. The standard should also envisage the supporting of the project solutions, and according to law number 384, and change the orientation from our standards from the manual to numerical calculation methodologies using the Eurocode sites, which have not been reflected in full to sufficient extent yet, and also use the new test and calculation methodologies which coming from the construction market, and also pay more attention to the verification, and because today the use of low qualified personnel causes a lot of questions, and of course the algorithm of working with the standards is a certain process, certain uninterrupted process, and it should be reflected if we make changes in one document in other documents. And our committee, our subcommittee number 19 of geotechnology, is working quite intensively. There are about 30 documents per year which go through us, and I think everything that I have tried to mention will be implemented in the Russian standards, and I hope I would like to thank you for your attention. And here you see the collective of NEOSP, which is wishing successful work to this forum. And I hope that I have not kept you too long time-wise. And thank you very much, Igor. And there is not enough time for everything. And to our speakers, I would like to thank them. Have a good night and see you again. And happy day of standardization.